Hey guys, my name's Dave, this is Custom Spray Mods, and in this video I'm going to go over 5 different common problems that happen to beginner spray painters. So basically, why doesn't the paint job look good, what went wrong, how to fix it. Going to go over all that in this video, check it out. Hey guys, before we get started, I'm also working for VG Auto Paints, and here at VG Auto Paints we do classes. So complete beginner spray painting classes. We get a panel, we hit it with a hammer, use body filler, primer, base coat, clear coat. We sand the clear, we polish the clear. I'll show you how to mix your paint, I'll show you how to set up your spray gun, all these little tips and tricks, all in my class. It's here, it goes for a day, and basically you don't have to have any experience at all. I've been doing it for about 10 years, and I've had anywhere from high school students to over 70-year-old retired people who just want to have a go at their own jobs in their backyard. So yeah, check out the website, vgautopaints.com.au, check out my classes, book in, and I'll see you here. Otherwise, check out this video for some mad spray painting tips. Okay, so one common problem I see in a lot of beginners spray painting jobs is the clear is very dry. When I say that, I mean it's very wrinkly, very dry and rough, almost like a sandy finish. And a common thing that causes that is by not going close enough to the job. So they might be holding the gun a bit too far away from the panel, and what's happening is the clear coat is kind of, it's drying in the air and it's landing on the panel, and it's not basically melting together as it should. So because it's so far away, you know, the clear is a lot more atomized than it should be. So what you want to do is get that gun pretty much uncomfortably close to the panel. Basically you want to be, it's almost literally about 2 inches away from the job, if that. So the fan should be about a handspan when it's hitting the panel. So most fans are bigger than a handspan on a good gun. So that means you want to get a bit closer. You get a bit closer to the job, that clear is going to be nice and wet. Now you think, I'm really close to the job, I'm going to get more chance of runs. So to fix that, you can go faster with your arm speed, how fast your arm is going with the spray gun. So if you're close and you're going quick, well then you minimize the chance of getting runs because the clear is going on nice and even. So go close to the panel to get it on nice and wet. Now the other thing you need to do is make sure you follow the panel. So if you have a rounded panel, you don't want to be painting like fanning it on like you're hosing the garden. You need to follow the panel. So that gun needs to go around the panel like a robot. Keep going around the panel, making sure the gun is always the same distance away from every inch of that panel to not get any dry spray. So another thing I mentioned is overlapping. Make sure you overlap, I always say more than 50%. So if your first coat is at the top of the panel, the second coat, the second pass is going to be just an inch lower. So you're going an inch lower on every pass. And if you're going quick, then the clear is going to go on nice and uniform. So by going down, overlapping a lot more than 50%, you're going to get the clear on nice and wet, it's going to be nice and even, and you're going to minimize the chance of runs. Now another thing that can minimize the chance of getting dryness in your clear coat and your base coat is to make sure you have the correct products mixed. So if you're painting it with a 2K clear, you mix a suitable hardener for the temperature that you're painting in. So if it's a very hot day, if it's over 30 degrees Celsius, then you need to slow that clear coat down. So use a slow hardener. Make sure that dries a bit slower. If you use the fast hardener in hot weather, well then the clear can dry in the air and it doesn't have time to settle, and it will stay very peely and very pinched. So use the correct hardener for the temperature that you're spraying in. Same goes for base coat. Make sure you use a nice slow base coat reducer, base coat thinners in warmer weather, and in colder weather you can speed it up a little bit. So to get that nice even clear coat, you want to make sure you're going nice and fast and overlapping and having the gun nice and close. Now, an easy way to do that is to use the fingertips. Use your fingertips to hold the trigger of the gun. The gun trigger is very easy to pull. Use your fingertips. That way, when you're holding the back of the gun here, you're using just the front part of your hand, and that's going to allow you to move your wrist. Your wrist has to be very mobile when you're painting. You have to use your wrist to change the angle of the gun so that you get that gun always in line with the panel. So by using your fingertips, it keeps your wrist free to move the angle of that gun. And that's a great tip I wish someone told me a long time ago, because it's a great way to get a good finish in your clear coat. Okay, so another common problem that I see in a lot of spray jobs, from beginners spray jobs to even professional spray jobs, unfortunately, is you can see scratches in the final finish. And what I mean by scratches is scratches in the base coat, and sometimes you can see scratches in the clear coat. And it's from a problem that's very easily solvable, and it's basically by using the correct sandpapers. So when we do a job, a repair, we're using a number of different sandpapers. So we might start with, if we have some body filler, we'll apply some body filler. We'll start with 80 grit to get that body filler flat. Then after 80 grit, well, then maybe you'll go 120 grit, then 240 grit. Then you'll spray the primer. Then after the primer, you'll sand with 400 grit, and then 800 grit. Then you're finally ready for your base coat. Now, what a lot of people do is they might, instead of going from 80 to 120, they'll go from 80 to 240. Or they just won't sand good enough with the next grit. So if you've spent 5 minutes sanding with 80 grit, you should spend 10 minutes sanding with 120 grit. And then you should spend maybe 15 minutes sanding with 240 grit. So you should increase the time spent sanding on each previous grit. Because if you don't sand good enough with that 240 grit, well then those 120 grit scratches, they're still going to be there. And if you spray a metallic base coat or a pearl base coat, well, those fine little flakes are going to go into those scratches, and you're going to see those scratches in the final finish. And there's no way of fixing it unless you sand that and reapply some primer or reapply some more base. Now, a good guide, one guide is to sand 5 minutes longer on each previous grit, but another guide is to double the number on the sandpaper. So if you start with 80 grit, then double that number. So 80 times 2 is 160. Well, there's no such thing as 160 grit, so we're going to go lower. We're going to go 120 grit. Now, 120 times 2 is 240 grit, so we're going to go 240 grit. After 240 grit, we can spray primer. Now, to sand our primer, we should double that number again, 480. No 480, so we're going to go 400. Sand 400 grit, 400 times 2, 800. After 800, you can paint anything. Solid colors, metallic colors, pearl, everything will stick to it, and it's great, easy to sand with, going to give you a nice finish, and you're not going to see those scratches. So just please sand thoroughly with your remaining grits. Okay, another problem that happens with a lot of beginners is cracking and contamination of some sort. Some kind of reaction between the ground coat and the top coat, or basically the clear coat is just cracking, or the primer is like separating and cracking. And this can come down to one common thing, and that is too much product on the job. Basically, if you put too much primer, too many coats, well then the bottom layers, they don't dry good enough. So when you put that base coat on, if you apply too many coats of base coat, or if you apply it too wet, then all the solvents in that base coat are going to attack that primer, and they're going to like penetrate that top layer and react and cause that cracking and horrible mess that you see if you get that problem. So yeah, definitely don't put too much product on the job. Don't put too much primer. And if you do need to put a lot of primer, then wait a good amount of time between coats. If it's a very cold day, you might need to get heat and wait a little bit extra between coats so that those layers dry. Putting too much product definitely is a common problem. I see it all the time. stop putting too much primer, stop putting too much base coat, and build your layers up slowly. You don't need to get the job covered completely in one go. When it comes to primer and base coat, just take it easy. Just go bit by bit, layer it lightly. You've got a lot of solvents in that base coat. You don't want it to react with that ground coat. So that's another thing. If you're a beginner, don't put too much product on, and you shouldn't get too much problems with reactions. Okay, so another common problem when you're painting is what happened after you've painted the job. You generally see dust in your clear coat. Now, it's a common thing, it happens to everyone, even when spraying in a proper spray booth. You can still get dust in your job. Where I'm painting in here, it's very easy to get a lot of dust in your job. So I've got a lot of tools to fix those bits of dust that land in the clear. Now, one great way to fix the dust is to sand it out. Basically, you need to sand that dust out and then you can machine polish it up. Now, when you're sanding it, it's important to use a very hard block. So when I'm sanding dust, I've got a very hard block and it's a hard rubber compound. It's very hard so that it cuts the dust. It doesn't just roll over it. If I used a softer block, it would roll over the dust and then I'll still see a little lump in the clear coat. So a hard block like this, and I basically just grab the grit off here, stick it onto the block, and then I've got my sandpaper there, stick that on, and I can use that to sand the dust out. Because it's flat, it's going to chop that dust flat, and then I can machine polish it. Now, when you're sanding out dust, I like to use 1500 grit, then 2000, then 3000. 3000 is very easy to polish out, and that's important too. You don't want to see those scratches in the clear coat once you've sanded that dust out. Alrighty, well, I hope you liked that video and I hope it helped you in your future spray painting jobs. And if you've had problems in the past, maybe you can watch this and go back and see something that might have went wrong and hopefully adjust. So yeah, I just want to try and help you guys and just put this information out there so everyone can get a nice, awesome spray painting finish with a gun. And I mean, the same thing applies for spray cans as well. So yeah, thanks for watching, and yeah, just hit the buttons and the subscribes and the Facebooks and YouTubes and TikToks and all that stuff. So yeah, see you next time.